Good evening. This is the Village Council regular public meeting. Good? Ready? Let's try this again. This is the Village Council regular public meeting. The date is October 11th, 2023. The time is 7:35. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled the same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
Mayor Vagianos.
Here, will you all please join us in a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have all witnessed the violence that has taken place in the Middle East this week, in a place that seems so far away, but of course, it's not very far away at all. Let's all hope that the horror of this ends as soon as is humanly possible. Will you all please join us in a moment of silence in furtherance of that hope? Thank you all very much. And now we will move on with our agenda. I move that the bills, claims, and vouchers and statements of funds on hand as of September 30th, 2023 be accepted as submitted.
Second.
Perrin.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Whites.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes. I move that the Village Council minutes of August 2nd and August 9th, 2023, having been reviewed by the Village Council and now available in the Village Clerk's office, be approved as submitted.
I second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes. Siobhan, would you read the National Diabetes Awareness Month proclamation, please?
Sure. Whereas the Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates 37 million adults and children in the United States have diabetes, and an estimated 96 million adults have pre-diabetes. And whereas diabetes remains the 8th leading cause of death in the United States, and whereas new diabetes cases were higher among non-Hispanics, Blacks, and people of Hispanic origin than non-Hispanic Asians and non-Hispanic whites. And whereas newly diagnosed cases of type 1 and type 2 diabetes have significantly increased amongst the United States youth, and whereas research shows that people at high risk for diabetes can lower the risk for type 2 diabetes by staying at a healthy weight, eating well, and being physically active. Whereas uncontrolled diabetes puts people at risk for serious complication, including cardiovascular disease, blindness, kidney disease and dialysis, and nerve damage and amputation. And whereas learning how to self-manage this condition through diabetes self-management education is the cornerstone of treatment. And whereas best practice guidelines to treat diabetes include, but are not limited to, insulin, oral medication, diet, physical activity, and daily self-management routines. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim November 1st through the 30th, 2023 as Diabetes Awareness Month in the Village of Ridgewood, and encourages all residents to help fight against this disease and its deadly complications by increasing awareness of the risk factors, making healthy lifestyle choices, and providing support to those who suffer from diabetes.
Thank you, Siobhan. Evan?
Whereas bullying is physical, verbal, sexual, or emotional harm or intimidation intentionally directed at a person or group of people, and whereas bullying occurs in neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, and through technology such as the internet and cell phones, and whereas various researchers have concluded that bullying is the most common form of violence affecting millions of American children and adolescents annually, and whereas thousands of New Jersey children and adolescents are affected by bullying annually, and whereas targets of bullying are more likely to acquire physical, emotional, and learning problems, and students who are repeatedly bullied often fear such activities as riding the bus, going to school, and attending community activities, and whereas children who bully are at a greater risk of engaging in more serious violent behavior, and whereas children who witness bullying often feel less secure, more fearful, and intimidated. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim October 2023 National Anti-Bullying Month, and encourages the Village of Ridgewood schools, students, parents, recreational programs, religious institutions, and community organizations to engage in a variety of awareness and prevention activities designed to make our community safer for all children and adolescents.
Thanks, Ev. And now, will you all join us as we step into the well to recognize the Project Pride Award recipients?
Yeah. Yeah. Mark, is there a cordless mic?
Hello? Is it on? Didn't sound like it. You think it is? The green light is on. Okay. The Project Pride Committee gave out 36 awards this summer to homeowners who really took great care in their front yards for all of Ridgewood to see. We really appreciate everyone that got the award. You really, if you got the award, it meant that your front yard was exceptional, spectacular. If we drove past it, we jammed on the brakes and said, okay, that's the house. So we really appreciate it, and we hope that you continue in years to come. So I'll call you up one at a time. The first award recipient is Alexandra Sakalas? Oh, yes, Gardner, come up, yes. Oh, okay. We appreciate it. And please forgive me if I pronounce anybody's name wrong. Michael and Janice Mijos. Edward and Lisa Britt. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Congratulations. Ryan O'Connor and Mary Porterfield. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Mary Ann Greco. It looks like Mary Ann didn't make it. We'll get this to her. Marshall Katzman and Sally Lewis. How are you? Thank you. Keep your pose along. Okay. And Kelly Fletcher and Louis Lagarde. So the other award winners, we will mail them their certificates. I won't go through the other names, but we really, really, if you're watching, we appreciate it. And next year, I hope more people join in and make their front yards gorgeous, and you'll get an award. Thanks. Oh, and along with the awards came a $25 gift certificate to one of the shops or restaurants in the Central Business District, and that was due to Tony Damiano and the Ridgewood Guild for getting all. So we appreciate that very much, and hopefully they will also contribute next year. Thank you.
Mayor, just a reminder, we have our auditor here at this time.
pardon?
We have our auditor here at this time.
Will he? come up?
Yes, so Bud Jones is our auditor for Nisavacha, and Bob Rooney, our CFO. We are approving the audit this evening. The council stating that they have read at a minimum the general comments and recommendations portion of the audit, and Mr. Jones is here to state what is necessary under the statute to do so.
Good evening. My name is Bud Jones from the Savaccia, and most people don't get the name right. Jones is so easy. But I'm happy to be here this evening. Wanted to let you know that we had the cooperation of all the employees and the professionals within the village in order to help us accomplish this document. And just high-level overview, the village is in excellent financial shape. Financial position improved both in the current fund and the water utility fund. There was a slight decrease in the parking utility, but it wasn't anything major that I would say. So your financial position is very good. I did see where the collection percentage actually went up. It's almost impossible. Your collection percentage, excuse me, last year was 99.46, and this year is 99.64. I mean, there's not much room to go any higher than that. So that's excellent. That's among the best in the state. And then we did have a few recommendations at the very end of the report. I would characterize them as more housekeeping nature. There's nothing really wrong that we're identifying here, just things that the village should look at and possibly address in future budgets. We also had some management suggestions that we put in a number of towns. Some of it's related to COVID funding because the audits for COVID funding, or at least the expected audits, are not going to be for several years. And there's some additional governmental accounting standards board statements that will be implemented in the future, and we wanted to highlight those to you. And if there are any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Questions? I think we're good, Bud.
Okay,
Actually, I'm
well,
sorry,
thank you.
One
Wait,
question for
wait.
Heather. I thought that there was something we had, the 3 points or the 3 suggestions. I know that we have to sign something saying that we read them. I don't know if you could just take a moment and walk us through. I know you characterize them as housekeeping, but perhaps you could speak to them at a high level?
The general comments and recommendations.
Yes. There were 3 recommendations, and each of the recommendations was addressed in the village's corrective action plan, which I believe is also on the agenda.
Could I just have you speak into the microphone?
Oh,
It's hard to
sorry.
hear. Thanks.
So the 3 recommendations are also addressed in the village's corrective action plan, which I believe is also on the agenda for this evening. The 3 recommendations were, the state requires us to identify those ordinances that are over 5 years old in which there is a deficit cash balance, meaning there hasn't been debt issued in relation to those capital projects yet. So we identified that there were some older ordinances with deficit cash balances, so they would either be funded through the issuance of debt, whether permanent or temporary, or through the budget process itself. We identified that cash books be maintained for monies received by some of the outside offices. The response to that was that the village will be implementing spatial data logic for those departments, and that's perfect. And the last item were encumbrances. Encumbrances are purchase orders in which the goods or services have not been performed or received, and sometimes they're also in the form of when an entire contract is let, in the case of capital projects. And we're talking about encumbrances in relation to capital funds here, and we're just asking that they be continued to be looked at to see if they're relevant, still in force at the end of each fiscal year. And those were the 3.
Good? Great, thank you so much, but I know Bob has gone through this all with us, so we are marginally familiar with the depths of it, but we're in a good place. Thank you so much for coming this evening.
My pleasure. If there's any question in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out, either through your administration or directly to us. We'll be happy to try and help.
Great,
Thank you for your time.
have a good evening.
Thank you.
And now we'll go to public comment. Just go right up to the microphone and state your name and address. No, that one over there at the podium.
What are we
Make sure the green light is
on?
on.
It's on. I'm sorry,
What are we commenting on? Is
You
it
can
just-
comment on, you can ask a question or make a comment of anything that you'd like that might be before us.
Okay,
But you just need to start with your name and address.
my name is Janet Sharko, and I live at 500 Franklin Turnpike in Ridgewood. And this is concerning the recent establishment of a position to police the tennis courts in Ridgewood. May I address that?
By all means.
Okay. I have several questions to which I want answers, or where I may find the answers. And as I said, it's in reference to this new position to police the tennis courts. How much does this position pay? And what are the daily hours for this position? And is it seasonal, or is this employee going to be policing the courts in January? And how many miles a week does this employee drive? How much money does Ridgewood make on tennis badges and on guest passes, which are $10 to play, for a non-resident to play on the tennis courts? And I received an email, and it seemed to imply that that Ridgewood residents were having a hard time getting access to tennis courts because out-of-towners were monopolizing the tennis courts. And I find that hard to believe. And also, and the email also said that the courts were being vandalized. So I don't know how this position of one person driving around Ridgewood is going to stop people from vandalizing the courts. I think this, okay, I agree with, if you want to have the privilege of reserving courts in Ridgewood, a badge is fine. But if you don't want that privilege, and charging non-residents $10 to play in Ridgewood, this is contrary to the tennis community in Ridgewood and in Bergen County. And this is recreational tennis. This isn't a money-making thing. It's just so people can get out and enjoy playing tennis. And so I find these regulations just totally draconian when we're talking about recreational tennis. So that's what I have to say on that subject. And also, I attended the meeting of about the two-stroke gas-powered leaf blowers. And I read in the paper that Montclair, which has a total ban, may be facing lawsuits. And I just wonder if the thinking that went into this thought of banning these took into account that Ridgewood may have to contend with lawsuits. And does Ridgewood want to spend money contending lawsuits about gas-powered leaf blowers? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. On Monday, as you all are aware, there was a freak accident in front of Raymond's, or I'm sorry, at the side of Raymond's. It made me think as to whether or not the possibility exists that that could happen somewhere else in Ridgewood. And I'm wondering if you might direct somebody from the police department along with somebody from the building department to check all the sidewalk cafes and see what improvements could be made to avoid things like that from happening in the future. If you have a mid-block restaurant, typically there are cars parked in front of the sidewalk cafes, which would prevent something like that from happening. However, as you all know, Raymond's is on a corner, and that accident happened on a corner where there are no cars are parked. So I'm thinking that there might be some safety improvements in order for those restaurants that are on corners that have sidewalk cafes to prevent something like that from happening in the future. Also, along North Broad Street, where people are angle parking and pulling directly into a space, the opportunity exists for a car to jump a sidewalk and hit somebody that's sitting on the sidewalk at a cafe. So that might be another area where you might want to consider some safety improvements to prevent things like that from happening in the future. Fortunately, the injuries suffered by the two people who were sitting there when the car came through were minor in nature, and they refused medical attention, but the possibility did exist that somebody could have gotten seriously injured or killed. So again, I'm suggesting that somebody who has a good set of eyes go to the restaurants that are on corners or on North Broad Street and check and see what could be done to avoid something like that from happening in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your observations, Boyd. Anyone else from the audience? I see we have someone on hybrid access. Susan, you're up. You're on mute, Susan.
Yes, hi. This is Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. I'm calling. I want to first thank Councilmember Reynolds for organizing the planting this weekend in the Central Business District. The flowers were pretty. I also want to thank Councilmember Winograd for reaching out to me regarding the proposal that was discussed last week with the fitting of a county footbridge onto the Kingsbridge footbridge. I know it was discussed, and I know that the footbridge that the county has was supposedly flat. I did not feel comfortable, I'll be honest, with the exchange in emails, because I thank Councilmember Winograd for saying that she would not support the flat footbridge, but it only takes 3 council people to say they would, and that will be then the proposal will go through. So I did reach out to residents in the neighborhood regarding the proposal, and I know a few of them emailed me back saying, oh, that was never, that the council people will never really ever pursue that. So I hope that's true, because flooding is a major issue, and I think flooding for residential homes should take priority over flooding for a Ridgewood football field. And to actually jeopardize residents for that is pretty astonishing. And I'm not trying to be mean when I say that. Finally, I also want to discuss, and I would like to get an answer too, because I know I brought it up in my last comments, that things were deemed emergency at the last village council meeting, such as cleaning up Maple, such as fixing Village Hall, and such as the commuter underpass. Yet, our footbridge has sat closed for over 2 years, 2 to 3 years, and no one has ever deemed that an emergency. And 2 kids have been hit on their bikes trying to take the alternative routes, yet still no one has deemed that emergency. I know that there's 2 other footbridges that the village is responsible for, and that's the one at the football field, and that's the one over at Orchard School. And I would like to know, would those bridges stay barricaded closed for years while it never be deemed an emergency? Because I highly doubt that would ever happen. I think those bridges would have been dealt as an emergency, and they would have been funds would have been promptly found to fix them. So again, I would like to know why this isn't being deemed as an emergency. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Would anyone like to respond to any of the commenters this evening?
I would. I'd like to respond to Ms. Starko's comment that there is a lawsuit pending. It is pending against Montclair, the city of Montclair, regarding their ban of gas-powered leaf blowers. We're watching that very carefully. We have gotten the complaint, and much of the complaint is based on clauses that are in Montclair's ordinance and that we chose not to have in the draft of the Ridgewood ordinance. That's all. Thank you.
I would say, so if you could send me the email that you're referencing, I think you had a lot of questions, and I want to ask you questions, and it's not a back and forth, like, are you a badge holder? If you can email me at the website, we'll see what's going on. We have had issues in the past with pickleball and tennis are under the same ordinance, so if you forward that to me, I'll try to answer as many of the questions that you had, and I just would love to see, because I don't play tennis, so I don't have the badge, so I didn't see the message that you got, and then we can try to track it down. The other thing, I just want to say about the footbridge, because I did call Suzanne last week. At no point was there a proposal for a flat bridge in front of us in our packet for discussion. There was the idea that we explore it because it might have been a good idea, but the minute we found out that these temporary bridges were flat, nobody on the council wanted to move it forward because that would be detrimental to flooding. So we did receive a lot of emails, and at a certain point, I did just speak for myself, but, because I can't speak for all 5 of us, but once we found out that a temporary bridge is flat, I think all of us felt that that would be detrimental, and it wasn't an idea generated from us or for our review. It was an idea, and it may have been a good one had it had the necessary curve, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Anyone else? Good. We'll move on to our manager's report. Keith?
So through you, Mayor, first of all, I just want to respond to a few of the public comments. Janet, if we could speak after the meeting, I'd like to get some more information and see where you're taking that from. Relatively unfamiliar with that, but I want to familiarize myself with it and put us in touch with our Director of Parks and Recreation so we can talk that through. To Mr. Loving, I will take those recommendations to both the police department and the building department so they can set eyes on that and see if they come back with any recommendations. I do want to just reiterate Councilwoman Winograd's comments with regard to the footbridge. I think it was Mr. Loving at last week's meeting that inquired about a temporary bridge. I directed or asked, I like to say directed, I asked Mr. Calby to reach out to his contact at the county. The county does not have stock in these bridges. And the one question that we were asking is if they did, you know, the flat bridge would not be conducive for Kingsbridge. And I think we were all in agreement on that. Whatever occurred in the last 24 hours where information was being given out to residents, and I have to believe it was somewhat systematic because Deputy Mayor Perrin spent a good part of her afternoon forwarding me emails from multiple residents because I was not included on those correspondence. But each one that I received through the Deputy Mayor received a comprehensive response acknowledging that a flat bridge was never an option at this location. It would not be moved forward or recommended by engineering or considered by the council. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. With that, there was a request, and this is my response, to the numbers at Graydon Pool this past summer. Our residential pool memberships for senior residents was at 482. Residential pool memberships for adult residents was at 878, and child resident badges was at 1,144 for a total membership and guest number of 8,046. The revenue taken in this year from Graydon amounted to $434,349.85. So relatively speaking, with a difficult weather season, I think Parks and Recreation did a great job at Graydon. We did have that one emergent situation which was well responded to, but I think we can all agree that the activities at the pool over the summertime are back up and running post-pandemic. So I want to thank Nancy Bigos and her staff for that. Yesterday I had the opportunity to attend with some members of the council, some other leaders in the community, a luncheon that was sponsored by the League of Women Voters. They hosted our lieutenant governor, our new lieutenant governor, Tahisha Way, here in Ridgewood. Very well received, and I want to congratulate the League on a successful event. Today we had lunch at the firehouse, and the annual fire prevention luncheon was presented, and I want to thank Superintendent Mark Schwartz and his staff for being present and having a presence from the school district there. Our fire prevention staff and Chief Judge walked all those in attendance through some very interesting aspects of our fire alarm system, and I think it was very informative for the adults to take back to the students when it comes to fire drills, public fire drills in municipal facilities, but also throughout the school district. The Shade Tree Commission meeting was held last night, had the opportunity to attend that and talk through some of the planning that they want to pursue for 2024. And I do want to announce that the plantings that will commence in the Central Business District will begin on October 23rd. The police department and I conferred on that. The contractors that we have planting the new trees in the Central Business District, they will start their work at 6 a.m. as to not disturb or try to reduce the disruptions in the Central Business District when it has to do with patrons being able to access businesses. The Maple Field contract that will be awarded tonight, we've been able to schedule for a Monday or Tuesday start this coming week. Obviously, the field company has been inundated with these requests for cleanup since the flooding event of 2 Fridays ago, but we will be on the ground, and we're hopeful that by Thursday of next week at the latest, we're back up and running at Maple Field. I want to congratulate all of those who were involved with Access Weekend, especially the folks at the public library. Saw the pictures on Facebook. Looked like there was a tremendous series of events that went on over the weekend. And I just want to thank the committee for their work in that space. And finally, just a few announcements. The Ridgewood Chamber of Commerce, their annual Farmers Market concludes on October 23rd. That's 8:30 to 2 on Sundays at the train station on the west side. The Village Shred Day, which was postponed due to flooding 2 weekends ago, will now be rescheduled for October 15th from 9 to 12 at the Graydon Pool parking lot. The Ridgewood Stigma Free group will be hosting an event in conjunction with the Bergen County Suicide Prevention Walk Out of Darkness initiative on Sunday, October 15th. That'll occur at Saddle River County Park. The check-in time is at 9 a.m. and the walk starts at 10. Bergen County Utilities Authority Household Hazardous Waste event will take place on Sunday, October 15th at Bergen Community College. That event will run from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Ridgewood's annual Health and Wellness Fair for older adults, hosted by the Ridgewood Health Department, will take place on Thursday, October 26th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Youth Center. The next council chat, where you can come in and meet with members of the Village Council, will be held on Saturday, November 4th from 9 a.m. to 11, right here in the Village Hall courtroom. We encourage folks to make reservations at 201-670-5500, extension 2206, but walk-ins are welcome. The Ridgewood Elder Dinner will take place on Sunday, November 12th from 3 to 5. Doors open at 2 p.m. at the Old Paramus Reformed Church. We encourage people to sign up for that event. And lastly, upcoming Village Council meetings. October 25th is our work session at 7:30. November 1st, Village Council work session at 7:30. November 8th, Village Council public meeting at 7:30 p.m. December 6th is a work session at 7:30, and December 13th is the Village Council meeting at 7:30. I just want to note that in the months of November and December, the Village Council will only be meeting twice each month. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Keith. And let's go to Village Council reports. Evan?
Great, thanks so much, and I will be somewhat brief. Had the privilege on Friday of attending the Board of Education meeting with the council. Great discussion on fields, very much enjoyed it. Also got to attend council chat on Saturday with the deputy mayor. Would really encourage everyone to come out for it. Didn't have a lot of folks turn out, which is a shame. So long as at least one person shows up, I'm happy to be there. But the next one is in November. I'm going to be covering that one as well. I think with Lorraine, would really encourage everyone to show up, make a reservation, or just come in as a walk-in. It's a great ability for all of you to get our ear as well as for us to hear directly from the public. Library, October 21st, has the Repair Cafe, 1 to 4. Lamps, toys, jewelry, whatever you got. It's much better than putting in a landfill. In the past, the event has been great. They have great success rate of actually being able to repair stuff. Really encourage everyone to do that. Ridgewood Symphony, October 20th, their first concert of their inaugural season. Finally, I'm going to do what I'm going to do at every meeting from now on until the issue is resolved. Keith, do we have anything new from the Department of Transportation on the park and ride?
I have not received a response yet, Councilman. I did reach out to them on Tuesday morning, which I guess was yesterday, because the DOT and the village were closed on Monday, pushing them for a response, but I have not received anything back.
So I know we're off next week. I'd ask if you could email me or give me an update, but again, as I said last meeting, it's not acceptable that we're waiting this long for an answer on something they should have anticipated months ago. It's absolutely infuriating, and I appreciate all the work you're doing. But if we don't get an answer, I'd like also to hear your thoughts, Keith, offline on potential escalation channels, because it's creating a hazard, and it's just government at its worst. It just needs to get better.
Sure. And we will continue to press, and if we need to reach out again to Senator Corrado's office, we certainly will.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ev. Siobhan?
Sure. So last week we met with Pride to discuss the upcoming event of June 2024, which is Pride. We're anxiously awaiting the date of the senior prom, so there's no conflict, and we are looking for 2 new members for Pride for 2024. A bulk of last week was spent on the most interesting projects, and I have to belabor the thank yous. Lorraine, Pam, and I all worked on breathing new life into our old holiday decorations of the kissing balls. We took them out of storage, and there's many people I want to thank, some who are here. Obviously, I want to thank the Guild and Tony, who I think the idea was really to get them back out from you and make town look even better. Mrs. Hallaby's not here, but Vera can be her proxy. She was just amazing. We had a series of kids who were changing the lights to warm lights, newcomers, and of course Heather, who was dreaming of the holidays in July and made all this happen. So we're very thankful. If anybody wants to be hands-on involved, we did have the loveliest group of people show up for an hour or two, and it made a huge difference with these things. So thank you to everybody. It was at times overwhelming, but also very fun. I too want to thank Access. We had a wonderful weekend-long event, and everybody on the council and the staff who showed up and supported them. It was an awesome event that ran all the way through Sunday. I want to thank Paul for attending the fashion show with me and helping us MC it. The kids were very excited. Paul definitely got his sparkle on. And I want to thank Paul and Pam for doing the closeout at Joanne Van Sant's church on Sunday night. On Sunday, I also had the pleasure of going to Rigid Arts Foundation, simply because Margie Downs, who is always so inclusive, invited all of us, and it was a lovely event and in a completely appropriate use of our stable. The artwork is still up there. It's great. If you have the time to go see it, it's wonderful. I too attended the League event, and I want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters. You know, voting rights are such an issue in our country, and it was so impressive to meet the Lieutenant Governor, whose direct job responsibility is elections, and she was wonderful. So thank you to the League of Women Voters, most especially Ann Burton Walsh, for a wonderful event. And then last night, I too went to Shade Tree, and I have some exciting news. For the first time in a while, Shade Tree is going to be issuing a trifold, which sort of details what Shade Tree is, how to be involved, what we do. We have, again, some lovely donated photos. Thank you, Rurik. And thank you to our student Grace, who put it all together. We're going to be releasing this on social media. It's been a long time coming. We also, even though Keith mentioned it, you'll see these signs around town. We're very anxious to complete the retreeing aspects of the CBD. It'll be done in October, so we don't mess up with the paving. And you'll see multiple groups out there doing the work and adding the additional tree streets. But for spaces where the tree has died, we do have a warranty, and I think those, thanks to our lawyer and great negotiation, those trees are going to be replaced as well. So you'll see these signs all around. And then lastly, this weekend is Adopt a Sapling. We've had dozens of people want to adopt a sapling, and we are looking, again, similar to the Kissing Balls, we're looking for volunteers where it's pretty limited scope. You have to be an excellent hole digger, own a shovel, and we're looking rain or shine, which is the big thing, because we're supposed to get rain, on Saturday morning to meet up. If anyone is interested in helping in any meaningful way, this Adopt a Sapling is a more sustainable approach to treeing our streets, and we're hoping that we can get them in. We were set with student volunteers, but the PSAT's got in our way, and I do want to wish all my students very good luck on their test and inspire anybody who's not taking a standardized test to grab a shovel and join us.
What time is that? Where are you starting and where are you meeting?
So to give you an idea, all the trees will be dropped at all of the locations. They've all been marked out, and we're going to meet at Orchard with a shovel. And we're breaking up into 4 separate groups. So each group has to plant between 8 and 10 trees.
What time?
8:30.
Thanks, Siobhan. Lorraine?
Thank you. I want to thank Siobhan for taking the lead on the Kissing Balls. I think the downtown is going to look spectacular this winter, and I know Tony's going to decorate the flower pots as well. The Project Pride Committee met on Sunday morning, very early, 7:30, with lots of volunteers to help, and we removed all of the summer flowers out of the pots, and we planted grasses and mums and cabbages. So hopefully, if you've been downtown, you'll see it look more like fall.
And I just really want to thank all the volunteers that came out. We honestly could not do it without you. Our Project Pride Committee really only consists of about 6 or 7 people, so we really do rely on volunteers, so we appreciate that. Citizen Safety Advisory Committee is going to meet next Thursday in the Garden Room. If you have any thoughts or issues about safety, if you want to come, it's 7:30. All are welcome. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Pam?
Well, I did want to point out to everybody who's here in the courtroom that we have 3 new photographs up on the wall. It's our former colleagues, Bernadette Walsh, Michael Seaton, and Susan Knutson, who all served on the council, and I'm glad that those are up honoring their service. Also, Green Ridgewood and the Green Team met on Thursday. Our Board of Ed liaison, Sarab Dani, reported on the district's installation of electric heat pumps, which are energy savers in our schools, and the grant monies that they were able to get. We also had a presentation from the League of Women Voters Climate Committee, the Water Committee as was, on pollinator pathways. They stressed that if we allow sufficient diminution of biodiversity, there will be a domino effect that leads to extinction of species. And our students from RHS also reported on Sustainability Day at the high school. And our communications subcommittee is looking into starting a sustainability newsletter to give residents information that they can use on green activities. The Central Business District Advisory Committee will meet tomorrow via Zoom at 8:30 a.m. We will have a SID presentation. That is a presentation about the Special Improvement District that we're considering, similar to what happened here in the courtroom last week. And then on the Open Space Committee, we will be meeting October 19th at 7 p.m. at Leicester Stable. And all my committees are open to the public, so please join us. The Planning Board did not meet on October 3rd. We are scheduled to meet on October 17th. Also, as to Access Weekend, I did especially want to say that the Friends to Friends Church was so welcoming to those of us on the council, and there was just a delightful musical service. It was really very uplifting. I also urge anybody who wants to have a real conversation in depth on any particular topic, come to a council chat. Let's discuss it. I find it more gratifying than standing at the podium and getting your 3 minutes in and not having a real conversation. Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks, Pam. And I'm going to recap a couple things, and one new one. There's a reason why Ridgewood's the greatest town in America. It poured rain on Saturday, and yet this was such a great weekend because we have so many people who are so involved in our community. I went to the fashion show music presentation by Access on Saturday at the auditorium in the library, and I will tell you, I could not stop smiling all day long. There were so many talented and wonderful young people who have their own personal challenges, and they were amazing. A very special shout out to my new friend, Katie, who is all about the sparkles and the hugs. It's just, next year you have to go, I'm telling you. We are all only one accident or one problem at birth away from being members instead of allies. It is a wonderful thing. But then, and on Sunday, the Ridgewood Guild sponsored Oktoberfest, and even though they got rained out on Saturday, this thing was a beast on Sunday. There were so many people, I couldn't even put a number on it. It was amazing, it was fabulous. There were hay rides, there was a beer truck, there's everything there. This is the town that we live in. And anybody who takes it for granted is missing the boat on this. And then, the League of Women Voters sponsors the lieutenant governor, the new lieutenant governor, for a luncheon where she spoke masterfully about election integrity, and a subject that is near and dear to us all. And I will tell you, I have known Tahisha Wei for a number of years, but listening to her speak makes me feel better about our democracy. So for all of you, please, there's so much going on in this town. Get involved. Getting involved is its own reward. And with that, we will now move on to our public hearings. And so I'm going to call Rich Calby up. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So I'm going to give you first a brief overview of why we're here tonight. To my right is Chris Colley of the firm Topology. Topology is the consultant for the village on all things Green Acres. They've been working for the village for several years on the village diversion project, but most recently assisting Ridgewood Water on diversion projects, and more importantly, PFAS projects that affect properties that are on the recreation open space inventory of the village. So we're here tonight to discuss two of those projects. To give you an overview of what we're going to do as part of the process, we are required as part of the new public law 2023 C-116 that was signed into law by the governor this year to have these hearings. I will do a quick overview of the purpose of the hearing. I will summarize an overview of the Ridgewood PFAS master plan, why it's necessary, why it constitutes what we're doing to treat PFAS, and the compelling public need. That'll be a very high-level overview, not a lot of detail, but it'll be set up the description that then Mr. Colley to my right will then use to describe the law, and separately for each of the separate projects as a separate hearing, go through the elements of the law and how we're meeting each one of them to provide proof to DEP that we meet the law and can therefore proceed with these very important projects. For each hearing, when we complete that description, we'll stop and pause for any questions from the council and, of course, from the public as part of the public hearing. And at the end, we could, of course, summarize both and explain what the next steps are. So why are we here? The Public Law 2023 C-116 was signed into law by Governor Murphy on July 20th of 23. The law establishes a process whereby municipal utilities, such as Ridgewood Water, can use lands preserved for recreation and open space for drinking water wells and associated treatment. The main purpose of this law was to facilitate treatment of PFAS for wells that pre-exist on those lands. PFAS is per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. These are regulated contaminants now in the state of New Jersey, soon to be regulated throughout the whole nation. New Jersey was one of the first to promulgate these laws, took a very strict stance. So there's a very, very large compelling need for laws like this to exist to facilitate projects like Ridgewood is doing to treat and remove these chemicals from our water. Ridgewood Water has 5 locations where new plants will be constructed and improvements will be constructed that apply to this law because they exist on properties that are on recreational open space inventories. 4 of those properties are in the village of Ridgewood, 1 is within the borough of Glen Rock. We're here tonight to talk about 2 of the locations in the village of Ridgewood. More specifically, they are the Linwood Well and the West End Treatment Facility. And we'll get into the details of each as we proceed. As far as the Ridgewood PFAS master plan, that laid the groundwork for what we're here discussing tonight. It proposed the improvements that are necessary for us to rid PFAS from our drinking water. Ridgewood Water and the Village of Ridgewood has been very proactive and is recognized as a leader in this field. We had one of the very first PFAS treatment plants installed in the Village of Ridgewood in 2019. It was one of the first 2 in the state of New Jersey. The PFAS master plan was approved by this council on November 9th, 2020. It provides a whole system solution whereby all 4 municipalities will be treated and all the water at the end of the improvements will be PFAS-free. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection reviewed the plan. They completed the review of that plan in the year after, November 18th of 2021. Since then, and even before then, work progress began. But since then, we've been moving forward with the construction of the new plants that are part of that plan. The plan proposed consolidation of the Ridgewood water system from 31 treatment plants to 12. The reason for that consolidation is because not every treatment plant has the space necessary to treat PFAS. The plan looked at different options, but at the end it was determined the most cost-effective and time-efficient method was to consolidate. That consolidation not only involves the construction of these 12 plants, but involves the construction of miles of water main to connect satellite wells to these 12 new plants. 2 of the 12 plants are operational today. Another 2 are currently under construction. The remaining 8 are at various stages of design, and several are just waiting for authorization from the I-Bank and permits to begin. So we're sitting here a year from now, I'd imagine there is going to be close to 6 to 8 projects under construction. It's going to be a very busy year for Ridgewood Water in the village next year. The 2 projects that are part of those 12 plants include the West End Treatment Facility. It's one of the facilities we're here to talk tonight as part of one of the hearings. The facility will treat 2 wells that are part of the Ridgewood water system. Both wells will have a total combined capacity of 430 gallons per minute. That's equivalent to more than 500,000 gallons a day of treated water. The second project we discuss is the Linwood Well. Linwood Well was an inactive well for several years. It was replaced with a new well to facilitate use of that well, which is very yielding in terms of what our system generally produces. The well itself produces 610 gallons per minute, close to almost 1 million gallons a day in water. Why that project is important? Because the Linwood Well will now take that water and pipe it to our car treatment facility here in Ridgewood and provide it treatment to make it PFAS-free. So I'm now going to turn it over to Chris to go over the law and how it applies to each of these 2 projects, more specifically, again, in each of the criteria, explain what they are, how we're meeting them, and then we'll open up to questions from the council and the public.
Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, and thank you, Rich, for the opening. My slides are actually in the opposite order with Linwood first, so if you could go to slide 5 for me. Perfect. Okay, great, thanks. So as Rich said, my name's Chris Colley. I work with a company called Topology. I was here about a year ago. Nice to see you folks again. I'm going to give you a very short presentation about each of these sites, sort of make sure you know the properties that we're talking about, and then get into the 6 provisions that are in this law and why we think they're relevant to the sites. I will say generally we're going to be summarizing for the most part content that was in a letter that was issued to the DEP several weeks back after a resolution was passed by this body. So we're going to start with West End Treatment Facility, and you can pop to the next slide if you can. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So the West End Treatment Facility is located over in the southwestern portion of town. That's about a little over a half-acre site there at the corner of West End Avenue and Cedarcroft Lane. And this is a facility that the village acquired, or sorry, a piece of property the village acquired back in the early 70s. As far as we can tell, the first water treatment infrastructure was put in place there sometime in the early 80s. And you've done various types of improvements over time since then. At some point, in the late 2000s, the site appeared on your ROSI, or your recreation inventory, which is what brings us here today. The improvements that Ridgewood Water is proposing for the site include a new building for the treatment facility, various other associated infrastructure, but sort of important, I think, for the council to understand and for the relevance to this law is that all of the improvements that are happening on this site as they're being proposed are happening within the existing fence line of the treatment facility that's currently there. So Ridgewood Water is designing and implementing everything within the current boundaries. And you can go to the next slide, please. And there are the fences you see right now. So it's kind of tucked away. It took us a bit to find it, but there's the existing facility, and Ridgewood Water would be making improvements within that fence line. But, and you can move to the next slide, you know, the law doesn't say any water improvements on parkland are exempt from Green Acres. There's 6 criteria that are in there that a project needs to meet in order to be eligible and to be exempt from the diversion process. So I'm going to tick through these briefly, but not too briefly. So first, that the municipally owned and operated water utility has a pre-existing well utilized for drinking water on this land, which, you know, is clearly the case here, and Ridgewood Water, as I said, has been operating there for 40 years now. Second, and this relates to Rich's comments about PFAS and the master plan, that there is an exceedance or expected exceedance of contaminants for, among other things, PFOAs or related chemicals. And, you know, relevant to this and worth noting is that in the consent order that Rich is dealing with implementing, the findings, the presence of PFOAs at this location is documented in there, and the improvements that are being proposed are required under that. So this is like very much part of your overall plan to address these contaminants. 3, as a result of an exceedance or expected exceedance, the utility shall be permitted to install improvements as approved by the DEP. You know, we address this really in 2 ways. First, as I noted, through the inclusion of the site in the Ridgewood Water's consent order, but also through the permitting process that Ridgewood Water is pursuing with DEP. So all of these improvements are being submitted to DEP and are following the sort of traditional permitting procedures associated with that. 4, no other improvements shall be made except as deemed necessary by DEP. This is sort of a similar statute, a portion of the statute, and a similar response that we've included in our submission to them. You know, Ridgewood Water is only going to make the improvements that are required by DEP to address this, and would be subject to any conditions they might place on that. And this statute also speaks to minimal disturbance to the environment. One of the attachments to the submission that was made to the commissioner on this includes an environmental assessment that was conducted to assess how these improvements would affect wetlands or floodplains or various other sensitive environmental conditions. The 5th point we need to hit on is that improvements should not substantially impact the use of the land for recreations, including public access. And, you know, really sort of the key part here is what I said earlier about the fence line, right? Like, this is an existing condition that Ridgewood Water is operating within to make these improvements. And then 6th, finally, requirement to apply in writing to the commissioner of the DEP, which happens late in September, and sort of brought us here to this public hearing process. So that's my summary of the applicability of those components to the site and the site overview. Rich, you have anything you want to add?
I just want to add, just today we learned that DEP approved our permit for this facility. So we were granted the ability to move forward. Next step is to get permission from the iBank to advertise for bids. So at this time, we'd like to take any questions on this particular project before we move on to the next one from the council and then the public.
And if we could just go to the next slide, too, because we have there you go, if there's written comment,
Yeah,
folks can follow that as well.
Yeah, if anyone is watching at home, they could issue comments in writing, you know, up until October 18th. Kalash.
In the letter we got from DEP today, there was a second facility that was also approved on East Ridgewood. Where on East Ridgewood is that?
It's hidden behind two commercial properties across from the duck pond.
Oh, okay.
It's a small little flag lot.
And Chris, could you share your PowerPoint with me? Because I think our Open Space Committee, which is meeting next week, would really like to see it.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I just have questions because I'm new here. So with this being on the Rossi, because it is on there and it's considered parkland, do we own the land and Ridgewood Water owns the structure? Is that the way that it works?
Well, the village owns all the land.
Right,
Ridgewood Water just operates the facility.
okay.
At some point, what should have happened is this little parcel should have been carved out and be given its own lot number, but that didn't occur.
Okay, and we're not going to create the diversion because of all the reasons you just put. Is it wetlands back there too?
Not on this particular property, but there is a stream and the parkland. I don't know what exists there. You know, certainly it's wooded, so I imagine there could be the opportunity for wetlands there. But the building addition will not infringe on any wetlands. You know, we've gotten land use permits as well for the facility.
I was just curious. I grew up the street from there. That's my old neighborhood. Cool.
Other questions? All good. I have to take a moment to thank and recognize both of your work. You know, it's under the leadership of Rich Calby at Ridgewood Water that, you know, we did not put PFAS into the water, but we are going to get it out. When I say we, Rich has been not just ahead of the curve, but ahead of the nation in proposing, enacting, constructing, and instituting a PFAS filtration system that, when it is done in spring of 2026,
Six will be the last plant completed.
you know, already we've had measurable improvements in our water quality, and as each new plant goes online, it gets better and better. And just so everyone understands, nationally, it is expected that the federal EPA will be instituting regulations for all 50 states. There are many states that are not doing anything about PFAS because they don't require it statewide. New Jersey is also ahead of the nation in requiring it. And when the EPA does this, those new regulations will be far more stringent than the current state DEP regulations. The bad news for many water companies and many residents is that those water companies, there will be many water companies that are currently in compliance that will not be in compliance when they are instituted. The good news for Ridgewood residents is that in spring of 2026, we will be down to non-detectable levels and we will be in compliance with all state and federal regulations. And it's only because this man got out in front and came to the council and proposed something that some might have deemed outlandish because of its cost and its scope. But today, we're all thanking him for it, and I want to thank you myself.
Thank you very much.
I would also like to say that with respect to this new statute that relieves water utilities of the need to seek diversions of, under Green Acres, you've saved us an inordinate amount of money, and without Ridgewood Water's pushing, I doubt this would have even come up as a bill in the legislature.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Do we have to open the hearing?
We do.
Okay.
We're going to go to that next. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
And with that, the public hearing on the installation of improvements to a pre-existing drinking water well on Green Acres property located on the northeast intersection of West End Avenue and Cedar Croft Road is now open.
Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I just have a question. Does this property have a name? It's a park. Is the park, I never heard of this park before. I'm just wondering what is there that is publicly accessible? Is there a trail, or What's there? I'm not familiar with it all.
There is. So if you go to Orchard School, the cul-de-sac on the west side of Orchard, the minute when you're coming down like lower Orchard, so to speak, there's parkland. It's like 3 acres. I don't have a copy of the Rossi there. Right before you get over the bridge to access the playground, there's a trail that goes from Orchard to West End. It has a different name there, but I always call it West End Road. And the kids commute in there through, like if you lived on West End off of Lincoln, you would walk down West End, bang a left, go through the woods, and pop up at the bridge. It's about 3 acres, and it goes all the way from the bottom cul-de-sac of West End to the river that runs behind the Tilke Arboretum.
I guess that's the Diamond Brook, or a portion of the Diamond Brook?
I don't,
Goes down into Glen Rock behind
yes,
the
goes-
Arboretum?
Yeah, and you can, so it's, on our side, it's 3 acres, and then when you cross the brook, like next to Orchard School Field, that's owned by Glen Rock on the other side.
Gotcha.
But it's a really nice walk. Wear boots, because if you're on the path, it's nice and dry. In the middle of the path, I don't know what this is, there's a cap, and then once you go over that cap, it gets really boggy. That's why I was asking if it was official wetlands.
So it's a no-name park, basically.
People sometimes call it West End. Some people, we called it Orchard. You know, we used to have access to it. We used to jump over the brook there, but it doesn't really have a name. I think on the Rossi, it's under West End.
Your
And it has
master
a,
plan calls it Orchard Place.
Orchard
Yeah.
Park.
Orchard Park?
I believe.
Orchard,
Orchard
It
Place.
says Orchard Place in your master
Orchard
plan.
Place.
but I've spent
Orchard
at least
Place,
10
okay. Thank you very much. I was just not familiar with the area. Thank
Ju-
you.
Just wear good shoes, Boyd, because it's very boggy.
anyone else? Seeing no one, I move the public hearing be closed.
Oh, second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes. And now we will move on to the public hearing on the installation of improvements to a pre-existing drinking water well on Green Acres property located within Maple and Graydon Parks. And that public hearing is now open.
I think Rich is
Okay.
going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you excuse me, we have to do this again.
You gotta tell me these things before I start.
I'll spare you my quick speech. I realize I talked really fast. But if there's any questions on that, please ask. But I will turn it right over to Mr. Colley to the same review on the principles of the law and outline how they relate to the Linwood facility.
Great, thanks, Rich. And if we could jump back to slide 2, please. You can go right to 2. Thanks. Okay, so we'll sort of reimagine that Rich said everything he said before. And I'll give you a little overview. Similarly for this one, you might recall that Rich and I were here for a scoping hearing on this matter about a year ago. And that was when we were proceeding under the diversion process. Now this law allows us to use a different process, but much of the same information will be shared. So this property is referred to as the Linwood Well. It sort of straddles 2 of your park parcels, Graydon Park and Maple Park. You'll see a nice historic photo on the next slide, but there's been a well on this site since roughly 1931. That well was taken out of service sometime around 2005. Ridgewood Water installed a new well as part of their sort of system-wide efforts in the years after that. And the proposed activity which they're attempting to accomplish right now as part of their overall treatment plans is to bring that new well into service to connect the old well, the new well with the old well house via subsurface utility connections, and then to connect all of that back to the Carr treatment facility, which is, I guess, one of the 2 facilities you already have online. So again, a project that's sort of being conducted as part of this overall PFAS master plan that Rich and Ridgewood Water are implementing. You can go to the next slide. This is what you'd see if you go out there. On the left is the old well house, pretty cool. On the right is the new well in that sort of fenced-in area. It's been getting a little vegetation. There's about 100 feet in between the 2, maybe a little less. And again, that's the area that would be connected via subsurface utilities and then brought off-site to the Carr treatment facility. In terms of the applicability of the different legal criteria, you can bump to the next slide, please, to this site and to this project. Like with the West End facility, Ridgewood Water is municipally owned and operated water utility with a pre-existing well on this site, on the Maple and Graydon Park. As with the previous one, there is an exceedance or an expected exceedance at this site. This property already has its DEP permits, and we're just quoting right from the DEP's report. Preliminary water samples show elevated concentrations of PFOA and PFOS in the replacement well, so clearly sort of checking off that criteria. 3, the utility shall be permitted to install lands and improvements required as approved by the DEP. This project received its DEP approval back in March of last year, March of 2022, so they've been reviewing and approving the work. And 4, no other improvements shall be made except as deemed reasonably necessary and approved by the DEP. As I mentioned, the site has already received its DEP permits for the underground work. There's no other work being proposed except what was approved under those permits. It's also worth noting that this is a case, and this kind of gets to what Rich was saying earlier about consolidation, where the treatment's happening off-site, right? So the work that's actually happening on the parkland is kind of being minimized because it's being treated off-site. And that gets to the 5th point about not substantially impacting the use of land for recreation purposes. As I mentioned, this old well's been in place since 1931, so people have been operating around that for a long time. The decision was made to connect the utilities underground to minimize the impact there, and to treat it off-site to also minimize the impact. And also, if you think back to that map, I think 2 slides ago, we're talking about 100 square feet of combined parkland. That's like 20.4 acres. So like 1/10 of 1% of the park is being affected by this. So we don't think that it has a substantial impact on use of the lands. And then 6 is governing body, and the utility shall apply in writing to the DEP, which we did. So that's my summary on that one. And Rich, you have anything you want to add there? No? Okay, thank you. So we'll...
Questions? All good. I have opened the public hearing, and so it remains open.
Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Very familiar with this property. However, we do have a question and something that's always bothered me. I realize that this well has been closed since 2005, but I still question, and I've heard that the water is going to be treated at another location. Why do we have a dumpster right next to the well, and that dumpster is also used by Tyco Animal Control? I don't know what they're putting in the dumpster, but it just bothers me that we have a dumpster right next to a well, and it's been there for years. I hope that Tyco isn't putting animal carcasses in there. I know they have an agreement with the village to use the dumpster in return for services that are provided, but can that dumpster be moved someplace else so it's not right next to a well that's going to be used? Thank you.
That's a very valid point. The dumpster is not a Ridgewood Water dumpster. It's a Village of Ridgewood dumpster. I'd have to defer, to the manager on that item.
Mr. Calby and I will look into it in the morning and come up with a solution.
And there you go. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I will move the public hearing be closed.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes.
Thank you. So just to sum up, just before we step away, a public comment on this matter will remain open. Anybody from the public that wishes to issue comments, you could issue them to my attention. My email is rcalby@ridgewoodnj.net. You could also find that on the Village of Ridgewood website or the Ridgewood Water website. Comments will be taken until October 18th. The letters went out to the Commissioner of DEP on September 25th. Per the public law, the DEP has 45 days upon receipt to make a decision. This public hearing was the next step in making that decision. We will inform DEP that it occurred. The letter let them know that it was happening tonight as well. And the hopes is that within the 45 days, we'll either have an answer or we will not have any, questions or concerns, and we'll proceed at that point with the construction of these important improvements. Thank you for your time.
Rich, Chris, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Let's move on.
Okay, so there are no ordinances for introduction or public hearing for Ridgewood Water. The following resolutions, number 23-324 through 23-330, are to be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the village council. They will be read by title only. Title 59, approval, water lab testing equipment. Award contract, water lab testing equipment. Award contract, public policy consultant. Award sole source contract, leak detection services. Award professional services contract, professional engineering services for preparation of a lead service line replacement program. Authorize agreement, temporary use of property, and authorize change order professional services, raw water mains. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes. I move the first reading of ordinance 3970.
I second.
Okay. Sorry. Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes. So ordered. Will the clerk please read ordinance 3970 by title?
A bond ordinance providing for the repair and restoration of the interior facade of Village Hall in and by the Village of Ridgewood in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, appropriating $110,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $104,500 bonds or notes of the village to finance part of the costs thereof. Hold on just 1 minute. I just want to check one thing. Sorry. Okay, before we vote on this ordinance, we do have to do the two resolutions. So there are two resolutions, 23-331 and 23-332. So they are extraordinary and unspecifiable services for an emergency for HQ Construction and Design of Monroe Township for $82,800, and then also a resolution authorizing the emergency appropriation pursuant to this for $110,000. This is for the third floor of Village Hall, where there was debris above the ceiling, and so we do have to adopt those resolutions prior to this ordinance.
Do we
So-
have those resolutions on our?
Yes, you do have them. They're here.
They're in the packet.
They
but
are.
They were-
They're
yeah.
on the
agenda?
short agenda. They did not make it onto the long agenda. It is part of the agenda, absolutely. So I just need they were on a consent agenda. If you want, I can read them in full, and we can vote individually, or we can do it on a consent agenda, whichever you prefer.
I think we can do it on the consent agenda. Anybody have any objections? They're all related.
Do
Okay,
we just
so-
need to suspend this, Heather? Like the ordinance? Or we just go out and
No,
come
you
back?
just go,
Okay.
we'll just not adopt it, and it will continue, and, but let's do these first, because these have
Okay.
to be done first. So, it's Resolution 23-331 and 23-332, and so if I could have a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Okay. Hold on 1 sec. 2 seconds. Okay, Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Whites.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes.
Okay, now we can go back to the ordinance.
So-
So we were up at the first reading, and then I will read it by title once again. Bond ordinance providing for the repair and restoration of the interior facade of Village Hall in and by the Village of Ridgewood in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, appropriating $110,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $104,500 bonds or notes of the village to finance part of the costs thereof.
I move that ordinance 3970 be adopted on the first reading and that November 8th, 2023 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
I second the motion.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes.
Mayor, if I may, I just want to report out that the work under that ordinance was completed over the Columbus Day weekend. I want to thank Heather, who initiated this effort back in the spring, and I'm very glad that we were able to bring it to closure. And I want to thank Chris Rudishauser and his staff for being here over the weekend to make sure that everything was done properly and that our employees walked in yesterday morning to clean and tidy offices. Some people said it was cleaner yesterday than it was when they left on Friday. So all good things. And I want to thank the council for their indulgence in working with us to get this done so that everybody here in Village Hall is safe. Thank you.
That's great, and I'm glad we did get this thing done. So everybody did a good job. Moving on. I move the first reading of ordinance 3971.
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read ordinance 3971 by title?
An ordinance to fix salaries, wages, and other compensation of non-union employees of the Village of Ridgewood, County of Bergen, and State of New Jersey for the year 2024.
I move that ordinance 3971 be adopted on first reading and that November 8th, 2023 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes. I move the first reading of ordinance 3972.
I second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read ordinance 3972 by title?
An ordinance to amend the salaries, wages, and other compensation and to establish the employee agreement of certain non-union officers and employees of the Village of Ridgewood, County of Bergen, and State of New Jersey for the year 2024.
I move that ordinance 3972 be adopted on first reading and that November 8th, 2023 be fixed as a date for the hearing thereon.
I second the motion.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes. I move the first reading of ordinance 3973.
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read ordinance 3973 by title?
An ordinance to amend various sections of Chapter 190 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Land Use and Development, and a section of Chapter 145, Enumeration of Fees.
I move that ordinance 3973 be adopted on first reading and that November 8, 2023 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3967 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be opened.
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3967?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 145 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood Fees at Section 145-6, enumeration of fees relating to code chapters.
The public hearing is now open. Seeing no one, I move the public hearing be closed.
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3967 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3968 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be opened.
I second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd.
Yes.
And Vagianos.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3968?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-38, deposit of money required, overtime parking prohibited.
The public hearing is now open. Seeing no one, I move the public hearing be closed.
I second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3968 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
I second the motion.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
Vagianos?
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3969 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be opened.
Move second.
Second.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3969?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 212 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood Parks and Recreation Areas at Article 6, Section 212-24 definitions, and Section 212-25 vehicles prohibited exceptions.
The public hearing is now open. Seeing no one, I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
So,
No? Roll call.
Oh, sorry.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, roll
Yeah,
call.
hold on. Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3969 be defeated.
Second.
And I think you wanted to say something, Paul.
Right.
Yes, we are still working on this ordinance. We realize that there are some issues that have come up in terms of getting this right because we have, we don't want electric scooters and electric skateboards in our parks, but we want to make sure that our ordinance does not have any, create issues for those in assisted wheelchairs or assisted scooters. So that is why we're going to defeat this motion and start again.
So, yes vote is to defeat. Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3964 by title on third reading and that the public hearing thereon be continued.
Second.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3964?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic at Section 265-65, parking prohibited at all times, and Section 265-69, time limit parking.
The public hearing on ordinance 3964 was continued from the September 13th meeting due to the fact that the village council was waiting for more input from the public and the neighborhood about these parking restrictions. The public hearing is now continued.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Orlana. I live at 232 North Walnut Street. My family is against any change in the parking regulation on our street. The information received stated that there was an inconvenience for some regarding parked cars on the block. The proposed change would be a major inconvenience to our family being unable to park in front of our own home. As the only stated reason for the proposed change was a subjective inconvenience for a small few, our objection is both subjective and objective. Subjectively, being unable to park in front of your own home is a major inconvenience. Objectively, limiting parking would make the street less desirable, affecting home values when buyers see the inability to park on your own street, reducing the residential feel of the neighborhood. Objectively, the proposed changes would be a detriment to the traffic pattern and create an unsafe environment for our children and pedestrians on the street. As seen on the next block of North Walnut Street, a radar speed detector is used as an aid to have drivers slow down. As it currently stands, cars parked on the street force pass-through drivers heading to the commercial downtown to drive cautiously. When there are no cars on the street, drivers surpass the speed limit recklessly. On our small portion of North Walnut Street, there are at a minimum of 17 children, middle school aged or younger, whom play and ride their bikes in the street most days. Changing the parking regulation endangers their safety, and doing so would put the village of Ridgewood liable for creating an unsafe environment. Children would be unable to use the street, drastically reducing the quality of life for our children. In summation, someone's inconveniences create inconveniences for others, but safety should supersede anyone's subjective opinion. Changing the parking regulations to cater to inconveniences creates an unsafe environment for our children. It is reckless and puts the village at risk for any potential liability, knowingly changing a regulation to the detriment of its constituents' safety. Please just leave the parking regulations the way they are and let the kids play. And if anyone who brought it up, I mean, I'll keep coming here, and if you guys need more people to sign petitions, I just want the kids to be kids.
That won't be necessary. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I move the public hearing be closed.
And a second?
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes.
I move that ordinance, this will make you very happy, 3964 be defeated. And I do want to say thank you for reaching out and coming.
I second the motion.
Okay, so a yes vote is to defeat. Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes. Nice job.
Thank you.
The following resolutions, numbered 23-333 through 23-356, with the exception of 23-342 and 23-353, which will be removed from the consent agenda and read in full, will be adopted by a consent agenda, those other numbered resolutions. There will be one vote by the village council, and each resolution will be read by title only. Title 59, approval, furnishing laboratory analysis services, water pollution control facility, and grade and pool facility. Award contract, furnishing laboratory analysis services, water pollution control facility, and grade and pool facility. Title 59, approval, furnishing and delivering sodium bisulfite and sodium hypochlorite solutions. Award contract, furnishing and delivering sodium bisulfite and sodium hypochlorite solutions. Award contract under state contract, interview room cameras. Award professional services contract, engineering design and inspection services, replacement of village underground fuel storage tanks at Fleet Services Fuel Station. Award professional services contract, design services for repair and preservation of pedestrian tunnel, ramps, and supporting infrastructure at the Ridge Train Station. Award professional services contract, employee assistance program. Award professional services contract for a feasibility study for a special improvement district. Award additional partial award 2023 road resurfacing and repairs of various village streets. Authorized change order, replacement of headworks equipment, screening and grit removal building. Rescind and replace resolution number 23-279, award contract under state contract and under Operational Services Division, PSE01, Purchasing Cooperative, purchase and installation of radio consoles for the fire department. Authorized participation in federal LESO 1033 program. Authorized grant application, preliminary engineering services, 2016 Safe Routes School Grant. Authorized refund and cancellation of property taxes for disabled veteran. Authorized free parking for late night shopping event in CBD. Extend date for dining corrals. Accept 2022 audit. Approve 2022 corrective action plan. Appoint member to Open Space Committee. Appoint members to Green Team Advisory Committee. Appoint member to Central Business District Advisory Committee. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes.
Okay, give me 1 minute. Okay, so, Resolution 23-342. Whereas, as a result of the significant rain event of September 29th, 2023, the turf field at Maple Park in the village of Ridgewood was damaged by flooding, rendering it unusable by the residents, an event that requires immediate action to remediate repair by a qualified contractor, an action which can be classified as an extraordinary unspecifiable service in accordance with NJSA 48:11-5, 1A, 2, and NJAC 5:34-2.3b, and whereas the extraordinary unspecifiable service necessitated the hiring of a qualified contractor experienced in carefully restoring turf fields after flooding events in a prompt manner so as to minimize the disruption to village recreation use of the field. Now therefore be it resolved that the retaining of a qualified contractor for the Maple Park turf field restoration work in a prompt and timely manner is an extraordinary unspecifiable service, and that an extraordinary unspecifiable service contract be awarded to Land Tech Group, Inc., 105 Sweeneydale Avenue, Bayshore, New York, in the amount not to exceed $52,354. And be it further resolved that the Chief Financial Officer has certified that funds are available in account number C-04-55-9CR-515. May I have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
A second?
Okay, discussion?
Yes, I did want to say that the flooding of Maple Field, our existing artificial turf field, and this expense, this extraordinary expense that we are now having to pay for today, it demonstrates that artificial turf fields are not a panacea. They will not cure all of our needs. Going forward, we may need to look at the expenses involved in maintaining this artificial turf field. And although I am voting for this measure because we have to, I note that there can be extraordinary expenses involved with maintaining artificial turf, even though in other circumstances the field might not be situated in a floodplain. It is worth considering the situation we find ourselves in today. And I vote yes.
Okay.
I'll agree with my council colleague. Is it, I'm not sure, Keith, if you know, do we put $100,000 aside every year for Maple? For when we need to replace it? It's either 50,000 or 100,000. Heather, do you know?
Yeah, offhand, I don't recall,
it's
but there is a
close to
sinking
100.
fund.
No,
yes.
I think-
I recently saw it was 50.
It was
The
50.
sinking fund is 50 per year.
Okay, because they figure every 10 years, we're going to have to replace it close to like 800,000. So I seriously do think we need to have a conversation as we get closer to the end of the life of Maple Field. We are hearing and learning so many things about turf fields, that they're dangerous for our kids, the environment, the adults, anybody that plays on them. And, you know, as Pam said, I'm going to vote yes because we have to, we need that field. But in the future, I think it's a very serious conversation that we need to have about what is going to go there next.
I would just say two quick things. The first is we do have insurance that I believe will cover a substantial chunk of this, which I was very happy to hear.
Approximately half, Councilman.
Approximately half, so a significant chunk is going to be covered by insurance. The other piece is for those of us with kids who are actively using the fields, they'll know what I learned over the past 2 or 3 weekends, is that the turf fields were the only ones that were open. I know my son was able to play most of his games because they were on turf fields, whereas a lot of the grass fields were closed or were largely unplayable. I welcome the conversation. I think there are some really reasonable points on both sides. I don't share the conclusion of my fellow council members in this regard in terms of the evidence out there around turf fields and the safety or non-safety of them. I think obviously this is a conversation for another night, and appreciate that we're all aligned that regardless of our own personal opinions, we kind of have to do this because we are where we are, and certainly look forward to the conversation, Lorraine, perhaps at the end. But I know I, for one, was happy that we did have turf fields elsewhere in other communities that our kids could play even after the unprecedented amount of rain that we've had over the last few weeks.
And
Anyone else?
Yeah, I want to say a couple things. I think there's a slight bit of conflation regarding turf and turf in a field zone, so in a flood zone. Obviously, the location of Maple is not ideal. I would hope for all 5 of us. And, you know, the field floods, it's expensive. When we had the sewage backup, the cleanup on Betts is equally as expensive. And to Evan's point, you know, the first place that the Ridgewood High School football team went was Hitchcliff Stadium, which is a historic stadium with turf in it on high, dry land. So obviously Maple in the long term is going to need to be looked at, and you'd be shocked to see that I would consider discussing the turf, not because of the issues with turf, but because of the location of the field. So every kid in Ridgewood left this district to go play, and the grass fields that were able to be open 3 days later were closed because what happens when you have excessive rain, and I was explaining this to Paul, turf against grass, any reasonable athlete would say, oh, for the games, I want grass, but unmaintained, chewed-up grass against turf, they're always going to choose turf. And in our case, we had so much rain that even when we got them back in, they had to close it back down. So I think the issue with Maple here, we need to do this. I'm grateful for the insurance, but we can't conflate the issue of the location of the turf field with turf itself. They're two separate issues.
Anyone else? Good.
Okay, then I'm going to do a roll call vote. Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes.
Okay. Next resolution. 23-353. Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that a contract for the services of a cultural resource management and historic preservation specialist for the Zabriskie Shedler House and the Shedler property is hereby awarded to Primavera Partners LLC, 552 Boulevard, Unit 1, Westfield, New Jersey, in a total amount not to exceed $8,600, and be it further resolved that the initial steps will include: 1, due diligence to gather essential information on the Shedler property, including designations, restrictions, condition, permitting, and municipal plans. Identify all regulatory approvals, analyze the National Register nomination and the process that was followed, identify opposition to and those not opposed to it, and 2, coordination with the project team, and be it further resolved that the Chief Financial Officer has certified that funds are available to fund the full amount of the contract in 2023 Capital Fund, AC number C-04-55-9CQ-503, and be it finally resolved that this resolution rescinds and replaces resolution number 23-149 because the address and name of Primavera Partners LLC was incorrect on the initial resolution. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
No.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes.
Okay, last resolution. 23-357. Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that Zeynep Gandhi Zachariah be appointed to the Ridgewood Arts Council for a term that will expire on June 30th, 2024. Be it further resolved that this appointment shall be made effective immediately. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Whites,
Yes.
Winograd,
Yes.
and Vagianos.
Yes. That concludes our agenda for the evening. I will now open public comment for the evening's end.
Tony Damiano, 274 South Broad Street. Regarding the free parking for the Thursdays, I just need clarification. Will that include the west side area, meaning Godwin and East Ridgewood Ave, also the parking garage and the smaller parking lots, Chestnut Street, and that small lot by Latour? I just want clarification before I send out a letter.
Keith?
Tony, if it's easier for the council, I'll get a copy of the resolution. I'll go over it with Tony so he has all the specifics.
Got it.
Is that okay?
sorry?
Yeah, I don't think he heard you.
I said you and I can go over the resolution so you have all the specifics so that
Okay.
you can dispense that information.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Boyd A. Loving. Sorry, Jim Reynolds, 550 Windmere. I've watched these council meetings for so many years that I thought that's immediately what follows good evening. I got Tony's permission, by the way. I'm here this evening because...
I'm sorry, didn't get your actual name and address.
Sure, Jim Reynolds, 550 Windmere Ave. Council, I'm here this evening because 37 years ago today, I married the love of my life, Councilwoman Lorraine Reynolds. Now, you may think that 37 years does not make for an exciting anniversary, but when you're married to such a caring and loving partner, every anniversary is exciting. But let me just give you a little insight as to what a 37th year anniversary is all about. This is the year that it became acceptable for us to burp in front of each other. It's being somewhere in between, great, we got all the kids through college, now when am I entitled to collect Social Security? It's the year that I surrender the remote control because I'm too tired to argue about the comedic value of the honeymooners. And finally, it's the time that all of those years of, well, let's just call it husband training school, finally paid off, and I preemptively replace the toilet paper when it's on its last square. It's the year when I ask, how did 37 years go by so quickly? It seems like just yesterday when she asked the minister to delete the word obey from our wedding vows. She was cool with trust, honor, in sickness and in health, but not so keen on the obey part. I'm so glad that we've had 37 years together, and I wish for another 37 more. Happy anniversary.
Thank you, honey.
Thank you for indulging me. Mayor, may I approach the dais?
By all means, Mr. Reynolds.
By the way, this is the best public comment ever.
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 Well, this is the best, certainly the best public comment by Boyd. Yay.
The real one's here now. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I'd just like to thank the manager for the report on Graydon. I had asked about that a few weeks ago, and I realized that Nancy was probably tied up with the emergency and just got around to it now. I would like to make one request about Graydon, and that is one of the things that bugs me about Graydon is that you have to drive over to the pool to find out if they're open. I know there's a new website coming up. Councilwoman Winograd has talked about that. I'm just wondering if we can move to the digital age so that we can look at the website and determine whether there's a lightning condition or something at Graydon that it is closed, rather than have to drive over and see green flag, red flag, yellow flag. It just seems as though we can move in that direction in 2023, and I'm hoping that there's a way to figure out how we can sit at home and determine whether the pool is open or not. I know if you call on the phone, they sometimes don't answer the phone. They got a lot of things going on over there. It would just be great if we could just check our smartphone or check our computer and see what the status is at Graydon. Thank you.
Sounds like an excellent suggestion, Boyd. Siobhan, your call.
Yeah, obviously, so there is on Group Spot with the campers, they put the alert up there. I don't know if you're on it, but they did a lot of the storm communication on that. I can send it to you, and I can follow up with Nancy. And I believe they were exploring in the short term using the Recycling Coach app to put up something temporary. I don't know where it is. I can find out tomorrow. But for the campers, they were using that, and it was very effective because that's how they knew to come get them. But I'll ask Nancy when she's back.
And through you, Mayor, the new website will have social media embedded in the homepage. So, for instance, if we are going to post something from Parks and Recreation, that Graydon, for example, is closed, that post will go up through social media, but be available and be able to be seen right from the website. Katie Fry from Parks and Recreation and I are both going through a training process through a company called Gipper, which is basically a design template provider to be able to come up with templates that are just easily populated and posted. And that's one of our goals for the new year, is to be able to utilize that technology to have almost instantaneous communication out both on the website and through the socials on the website. So, that's definitely going to be a major initiative from the communications standpoint for 2024 as well.
Good evening, Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Tonight, for the umpteenth time, we heard this catchy phrase that we did not put PFAS into the water, but we will get it out. And we also heard tonight that by spring 2026, there will be non-detectable levels of PFAS in the water, thanks to the efforts that Mr. Calby described. You're planning to put a PFAS-laden rubber rug over by wells that people drink from at Shedler. This is just so disingenuous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else from our audience present? No, then we will go to our hybrid access. Susan, you are up.
Hi, hi again. Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. I'll begin by wishing Councilmember Reynolds a happy anniversary.
Thank you.
I also now have a question in regard to the Village Hall expense to fix the third level and the facade. Is that over 300,000? 110, and then approximately 83K. And that was deemed an emergency with all the resolutions and stuff. That seems a lot, considering that I know that the Village Council has sat here for a good portion trying to figure out how to expenditure the footbridge that was also like 400,000. So I'm trying to understand again why things are being deemed an emergency and others aren't. And no one really answered that question at the beginning after I asked it. And is it really objective or is it subjective? Because right now I do really think it's objective. And you guys are just doing things how you want to do it and not taking into account the necessity, especially for this side of Ridgewood, using the footbridge. I mean, those people ended up sending you a lot of emails today. So I know I speak for a good portion of residents who don't attend these meetings, but still are very upset about the footbridge being closed. And I do think that after all the discussion, this is on a separate note, just to piggyback after Ann Loving, that, yeah, we were talking about PFAS today, but it seems like a little bit hypocritical that you guys will be adding a turf field near people's wells and adding PFAS into their water supply, yet you want to take it out of yours. Again, that's just a side note. But I would like to, again, get back to, please answer what is deemed an emergency and how it is deemed in Ridgewood an emergency. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up, Alexandra.
Hi, Alexandra Ferrone, 208 North Walnut. I actually had raised my hand for action item 19, and perhaps there was a glitch and it didn't go through, which is no problem. I just wanted to make a point. I am one of the people directly impacted by those parking in front of my home. I am against what was originally proposed, but I was curious to find out as to whether or not there has been any progress with respect to the postal workers. There's about 4 to 6 that park in front of our house every single day, coupled with maybe 1 or 2 employees at Raymond's. I really think if we are able to just have the postal workers park in their own parking lot, or we work out with them and just let them park for free in the municipal lot across the street, it would clear up the majority of our street and would cease them from parking directly in front of our driveways. And I think that it's a fair request that they park where they're supposed to park. And with that, I think also one of the major issues on our street is that the Linwood and North Walnut cross street is very dangerous, and we really do need it to be a 4-way stop. There's accidents there frequently. There's near misses with pedestrians all the time. There's kids there constantly, aside from just our own children, but with Bethlehem having an early learning center. and the kids, going back and forth to Graydon during the summer. It's just a heavily pedestrian-heavy corner as well. So if those two items could be looked into by someone on someone in town, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Christina, you're up.
Christina Million, 530 West Saddle River Road. I just wanted to follow up on my question last week about extending an invite to Dr. Sarah Evans from Mount Sinai to Village Hall, just to discuss her findings and thoughts regarding PFAS and turf. And if not, I would ask that we have a council-wide phone call with her. And then my second question is, EcoTurf has been pushed by Councilmember Winograd over the last few weeks. And so hearing that Maple's getting new turf, I wanted to ask, will it be EcoTurf? Because it sounds like the turf vendors are claiming it's safer. So I'd assume that the safest option will be going into Maple, but it would be great to clarify that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Cynthia, your turn.
Okay, hi, it's Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. So I think, obviously I want to address turf first and foremost. These are important tax dollars that are being spent on plastic grass that doesn't last. We know that, and cannot be recycled. It's like, we're kind of on I just feel like a broken record. We're trying to protect all of our children, not just the people in the Shedler community. A number of people tonight brought up, the fact that we have the private wells. We're talking about PFAS, a multi-million-dollar lawsuit with Bridgewood Water, against many companies who have put PFAS in the water. But there are known carcinogens and other toxic components that come from artificial turf. And I know Evan has said many times that, he's not convinced that this is even, a real thing. But let me tell you, it is. We have a doctor that wrote from Mount Sinai to the council, and I think, it would really be great if, you could meet with her, because I think that there are many things that she can educate all of us on, not just the council, but residents. So I'm hoping that takes effect and that becomes a priority. We'd love, these multi-purpose green spaces, but why does it have to be turf? And, so I implore, the council to really find more creative ways to come up with a solution for Shedler. The next thing I wanted to bring up was there was a gentleman talking about how parking on his street and traffic patterns would change the nature of their, enjoyment. Kids riding bicycles and people walking on the street. Same thing is going on in our neighborhood when there's a proposed plan to put a giant sports field, or, we don't want to call it complex, but a sports field. So in essence, you don't want to pass a resolution to change that quality of life, but you have to take into consideration the safety concerns that we're dealing with on West Saddle. Very narrow road. We've said many times, we'd hate to, see a horrible accident take place. It's really unsafe. So I think there have to be traffic studies, or, some way the risk has to be mitigated. That's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Does anyone have any comments?
I do. I just want to clarify, because it sounded like Christina thought that we were going to replace the maple turf. We are not. We were just talking about we have to clean it up due to the storm. I was talking about in the future, when it does come time that it needs to be replaced, we really need to have a serious conversation about what to put there. So I just want to clarify. What we voted on tonight was strictly a cleanup of the field and nothing else. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that the existing vendor at Maple does use a combination. It does have some of the coconut fill, and again, it is just a repair. It is not a recarpeting and a returfing. Just to give you an idea, the actual turf, if we were to replace it, is hundreds of thousands of dollars as opposed to the $52,000. With respect to Suzanne, I want to make sure that the ordinances, well, the repairs that we were passed for here are to make it safe so people can come to work. So the nature of the emergency is that we had infrastructure that was crumbling and it needed to be repaired so the people who work in this building could be safe. And that is how we got to the definition of emergency. I also want to echo that being new this year to the capital cycle, the bridge was left off, but I do believe it's a priority for next year. So I hope that answers that question. I think those are the only two things I wanted to say.
I have to agree with Siobhan. Repairing the ceiling on the third floor of Village Hall is an emergency because our employees are underneath it. My understanding is that we first learned about this problem when something fell and injured one of our employees. So I think we do need to take that seriously and deal with it as quickly as possible, whereas we've been able to close off the Kingsbridge footbridge and people just aren't on it. And that way we keep people safe. With regard to Dr. Evans, I have reached out to her. I'm just waiting for her response. I plan to invite her to come speak in Ridgewood. Somebody mentioned that artificial turf cannot be recycled. The 3 companies we have spoken to have told us that they recycle and at no extra cost. They recycle them in that they turn them back into new fields, new artificial turf fields. So there is some recycling. That's all I have.
And Susan, I know that you are always asking us about the bridge at Kingsbridge Lane. It is this council's priority to get that done in next year's capital budget. We have had several meetings with senior staff to ensure that there is going to be money in the budget, and of course it's not a done deal until it's actually done, but that is an absolute priority of this council for spring of 2024 to allocate money in our capital budget for that. So just want to let you know.
Mayor, two quick points, if I may.
Yes.
One, to Susan, the amount not to exceed for the repairs on the third floor were $110,000. So let me be clear about the actual number. And while I want to say, and it came up at the work session, and it's a valid point, there was a delay between the time that the incident happened with the employee who was injured on the job here in Village Hall and the time that this work got done. But I truly believe that that was of no fault of anybody, okay? The work took too long. Heather Maylander agrees with that. Bob Rooney agrees with that. Chris Rudisheiser agrees with that. Keith Kasmark agrees with that. However, we were going through a budget process in the spring, okay? It was a contentious process to get where this council wanted to be, okay? And with that, monies needed to be appropriated and found in the existing budget during the summer for this work product to be completed over this past weekend. That being said, we also had to deal with the contractor who needed to identify the spaces that were vulnerable throughout the third floor. That was a time-consuming process. Quotes and estimates needed to be updated during that process, and as soon as it was feasibly possible, we moved forward with it. And as Councilwoman Winograd and Deputy Mayor Perrin said, you know, we are not going to allow our employees to be in a vulnerable position when they're sitting at their desk doing work on the behalf of this village and on behalf of the taxpayers of this village. So I just want to be clear that this was an emergency, this was done properly, and it was done to keep the employees who are working under this roof safe. And secondly, Mayor, I'm sorry, I may, to Alexandra, both Heather and I did reach out to the post office to try to address some of the employee parking issues in that area during the workday. We were not terribly successful in making any progress with the postmaster in her directing where the employees should park. We are going to revisit the discussion with the hierarchy at the church across the street to see if we can reestablish some sort of arrangement that may have previously existed. That was Councilwoman Reynolds' suggestion, and we'll try to have that discussion sometime next week.
Keith, thank you so much for addressing all of the needs and all of the inquiries from all of our residents. I find that to be a daunting and overwhelming task that you seem to handle effortlessly. I'm not sure how you do that with a sleight of hand, but
This is what we do.
yes. That being said, shall we call it a night?
Second.
I need a motion to adjourn. So
Is
moved.
that?
Okay, now, go for it. Councilmember White is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, we're signing.